My name's Mary, and life took a tough turn when I was just 10. My dad had been sick for a while, but I didn't really understand what was going on until he was gone for good. One day he was there, and the next day, there was just an empty seat at the dinner table. It didn't take long for my mom to fill that empty space. 2 months later, she brought home Jack. I guess she felt lonely and needed someone fast. Jack moved in like he owned the place, and it was clear he didn't want me around. Mary, this is Jack. Jack, this is my daughter Mary. Mom introduced us the day he moved in. Jack looked at me coldly, like he'd rather be anywhere else. Hi, I managed to say, feeling shy but trying to be polite. Jack just nodded, not even smiling. He turned to Mom. Linda, can we talk about the living arrangements? I remember feeling a chill as they walked away, his hand on her shoulder. It didn't take long before I started feeling like an outsider in my own home. Jack had rules for everything and was always on my case. Don't leave your stuff in the living room. Eat faster. Don't make too much noise. It was non-stop. Mom just went along with whatever Jack said, her eyes looking empty or maybe just tired. One evening at dinner, things boiled over. I accidentally knocked over a glass of water, and it spilled towards Jack. Clumsy kid, can't you do anything right? Jack snapped, jumping up as the water splashed on his pants. Sorry, Jack, it was just an accident, I stammered, feeling my face heat up. Sorry doesn't clean up messes, Mary. Be more careful, he scolded, his voice louder than it needed to be. Mom just sat there, quietly dabbing her mouth with a napkin, not saying anything. I looked at her, hoping she would say something, anything, to stand up for me, but she stayed silent. I heard them arguing in their room. Jack's voice was loud and harsh. Linda, that kid of yours needs to shape up. I'm not going to live in chaos just because you're used to it. Mom's reply was soft, but I could catch bits of it. Jack, please, she's just a child. She's still adjusting. Adjusting? It's been months. I'm telling you, if things don't change, I didn't hear the rest, but I didn't need to. The message was clear. Jack wanted me out of the way, and Mom wasn't fighting too hard against it. The next few months were just as hard. Jack's complaints were a daily thing, and Mom's silence grew heavier. I was walking on eggshells, trying not to make a sound, trying to disappear if I could, but you can't disappear in your own home, can you? Even a 10-year-old knows that much. Life at home got more complicated when Mom told us she was expecting. Jack already had a hard time tolerating me, and the news didn't exactly make him happy. He was silent for a long minute before he spoke, and when he did, his words were cold. Well, that's just great, Linda. Just what we needed, he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Mom just smiled, but it was a weak smile. It's a blessing, Jack. You'll see, a fresh start for us. I felt a mix of excitement and dread. A little brother or sister seemed like a dream, someone new to connect with. But with Jack's mood swings, I wasn't so sure. The months flew by, and the baby finally arrived. It was a girl, and they named her Lauren. I was thrilled. She was so tiny, and when I first saw her, all wrapped up in her pink blanket, my heart melted. I thought having Lauren around might make things better, even make Jack soften up a bit. Holding Lauren felt magical. She was so small, her tiny fingers grasping at nothing. Hey there, Lauren, I'm your big sister, Mary. I'm going to take good care of you, I whispered, promising silently to be there for her no matter what. But the magic didn't last. Bringing Lauren home changed things again. Jack became fussier than ever, especially about money. One night, about a week after Lauren came home, I overheard him talking to Mom in the kitchen. His voice was harsh, louder than it needed to be. More expenses, Linda. Diapers, formula, who knows what else. And what about Mary? She's not even mine, and I'm paying for her too. Mom's voice was a quiet murmur. Jack, please, she's just a child. We can manage, things will settle down. It's not just about managing Linda, it's about priorities. We need to think about our family now, our real family. I knew what that meant. I wasn't real family. The sting of those words hit me hard. I slid down the wall by my door, hugging my knees, trying not to cry. The final straw came when Jack sat us down in the living room one evening. His face was serious, and he avoided looking at me. Linda, we need to think about the future. Mary's getting older, and expenses are piling up. Maybe it's time she went to live with her Aunt Joyce. It felt like a punch in the gut. Being sent away, just like that. Mom finally spoke, looking at me with sad eyes. Mary, honey, it might not be so bad. Aunt Joyce has a nice house, and you'll be well taken care of. But Mom, I don't want to go. I want to stay here with you and Lauren. The room went silent. Jack's next words were cold and final. It's decided then. I'll call Joyce in the morning. Moving in with Aunt Joyce was like stepping into a different world. Her house was big, clean, and always silent, too silent for comfort. The first day I arrived, she laid down her rules like we were negotiating a peace treaty after a long war. You'll follow my rules under my roof, Mary. No nonsense, no mess, no back talk, she declared as she led me through the hall to what would be my room. The room was plain, with bare walls and a single bed in the corner. It felt nothing like home. I nodded, too tired and upset to argue. Homework right after school, chores before dinner, and lights out by 8. I won't tolerate any laziness or sloppiness, you hear? Aunt Joyce continued, her voice firm. Yes, Aunt Joyce, I whispered. Speak up when you're spoken to. Let's have no mumbling here, she snapped. I quickly corrected my tone. Yes, Aunt Joyce, I understand. The days that followed blended into each other, each as strict and unforgiving as the last. Aunt Joyce was tougher than anyone I'd ever known. She had a way of making simple conversations feel like interrogations. Homework was a battlefield too. If I got a B instead of an A, Aunt Joyce had sharp words for me. You can do better than this. Your laziness won't fly here, she'd scold, even though I'd spent hours poring over books. The worst part was how she reminded me of my mom's decision to send me away. If I dared to talk back or ask for less criticism, she'd retort sharply, "No wonder your mom sent you here. You need discipline. You obviously weren't getting it." Those words hurt. They always did. They made me feel unwanted, unloved, like I didn't belong anywhere. I was just another problem Mom solved by sending me away. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. I learned to keep my head down, do what I was told, and only speak when necessary. Aunt Joyce had no patience for tears or complaints, and I didn't have the energy left to fight. It's for your own good, she'd often say after scolding me harshly, as if her sharp words were supposed to make me into someone better. I wasn't sure who that better person was supposed to be. All I knew was that I was getting really good being alone, at being quiet, and at not being a problem. Because in Aunt Joyce's house, not being a problem was the best thing you could be. Living with Aunt Joyce was suffocating, and I found myself missing my mom more each day, even though I knew she had let me go without much of a fight. One afternoon, the feeling of missing her got too strong to ignore. Aunt Joyce was out, probably at her bridge club, and I knew I had at least a couple of hours before she'd be back. Her phone was always left on the kitchen counter, charging next to the fruit bowl. It seemed like my only link back to my old life. I hesitated for a minute before I picked it up. Dialing my mom's number was like muscle memory. I hadn't forgotten it, and maybe I never would. My heart raced as I heard the phone ring once, twice, then I heard her voice. "Hello? Mom, it's me, Mary." There was a pause, a breath, maybe. Then, "Mary, why are you calling?" I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "I just wanted to hear your voice." Another pause, longer this time. Then she spoke, cold and hard. "You shouldn't have called." "But Mom." "Mary, listen to me. You need to stop this. I can't have you calling me." "But why? I miss you, Mom. I miss home. When can I come back?" Her voice was flat, emotionless, like she was discussing the weather. "You can't. That's done. Don't call here anymore." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mom, please. Just don't, Mary. There's nothing here for you. Goodbye. She hung up and the line went dead. The silence in the kitchen was overwhelming. I felt my hand shake as I put the phone back on the charger. The finality in her voice broke something in me. She didn't want me. She really didn't want me anymore. Tears blurred my vision as I stumbled to my room. I closed the door softly, not wanting to make any noise that might hint at my rebellion. I sat on the floor, my back against my bed, and let myself cry. The room felt smaller than ever, like a box slowly closing in on me. I heard the front door open and close, and Aunt Joyce's voice called out, "Mary, you better have finished your chores." "Yes, Aunt Joyce," I called back, quickly wiping my eyes with the back of my hand. I didn't want her to see any signs of weakness. Weakness wasn't allowed here. I went to the kitchen to help with dinner, acting like nothing had happened, but inside, I felt different, emptier, more alone. Mom's final words kept playing over and over in my head. That night, Aunt Joyce found the call log on her phone. Her face twisted into a scowl as she stormed into my room, her voice a harsh whisper that cut through the quiet. "So, you took my phone to call your mother. Thought you'd go behind my back." I froze, feeling the blood drain from my face. I just wanted to hear her voice. Aunt Joyce laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "And what did that get you, huh? She doesn't want you, Mary. Even you can't deny it now." Her words were like ice, and I felt them chill me to the bone. She grabbed my arm, her grip tight and painful. "No more phone, no more pity parties. You're here because she doesn't want you. Remember that." The punishment was severe, more chores, stricter rules, and the cold shoulder from Aunt Joyce, who made sure I felt just how unwanted I was every day after that. Aunt Joyce's house had become a prison, each day dragging on heavier than the last. It was clear I was nothing but a burden to her, a nuisance she put up with only because she had to. But even that thin thread of obligation snapped one chilly morning, a year into my stay. "You're packing your bags today, Mary," Aunt Joyce announced over breakfast, her voice stern and final. I stared at her, my spoon halfway in my mouth. "What? Why?" "Your mother stopped sending money." "No money, no reason to keep you here," she replied bluntly, sipping her coffee as if we were discussing something as trivial as the weather. I felt a cold dread settle in my stomach. "So what happens to me now?" She shrugged, a cold, dismissive gesture. "Not my problem. You can go live with your grandmother. If she won't take you, then it's the orphanage." The thought of going to an orphanage terrified me, but the mention of Grandma sparked a tiny flicker of hope. I hadn't seen her since I was little, barely remembered her, but surely she wouldn't turn me away. Packing my bags felt surreal, like it was happening to someone else. I was packing up my life at Aunt Joyce's, each item a reminder of the year I'd lost. Aunt Joyce drove me to Grandma's house, and the car ride was silent except for the hum of the engine. When we arrived, the house was smaller and cozier than Aunt Joyce's big, imposing place. Grandma was waiting at the door, her expression unreadable. "This is Mary, your granddaughter," Aunt Joyce said, not bothering with any pleasantries. "I can't keep her anymore. Linda stopped paying." Grandma looked me over, her eyes sharp but not unkind. "I see, come in, Mary." Aunt Joyce didn't stay long. With a brief nod, she left, her duty to me discarded as easily as she had gotten rid of me. Inside, Grandma's house was warm and filled with the scent of cinnamon and something sweet baking. It felt welcoming, a stark contrast to Aunt Joyce's cold, sterile environment. "You'll be staying in the guest room. I suppose we'll need to sort out some more permanent arrangements," Grandma said as she led me down the hall. The guest room was small, with a window overlooking the garden. It felt safe, a feeling I hadn't associated with a place in a long time. "Thank you, Grandma," I said quietly, still unsure of my welcome. She nodded. "We're family, Mary. You belong here more than anywhere else." Over the next few weeks, I adjusted to life with Grandma. It was different. She was strict, but there was a kindness to her rules, a gentleness in her reprimands. You need to do your chores, Mary. Everyone contributes here, she would remind me, but her tone was patient, not harsh. Yes, Grandma, I would respond, grateful for her fair approach. Living with Grandma, I began to heal. I found comfort in the quiet routine of our days, the peaceful nights, and the steady rhythm of life that was so different from the chaos with Aunt Joyce. The months passed, and on my 19th birthday, Grandma made a decision that would change everything. Over breakfast, she slid an envelope across the table to me. "Take a look at this, Mary," she said, her voice carrying a mix of seriousness and warmth. I opened the envelope and pulled out some official-looking papers. "What's this?" "It's adoption papers, Mary. I want to adopt you. Make things official so no one can ever make you feel unwanted again," she explained, watching me closely for my reaction. I felt a lump in my throat. "Really, Grandma? You mean it?" "Yes, I do. You're not just staying here, Mary. You're my family, and it's time we made that clear to everyone else, too." 2 weeks later, it was done. We went to court, and I officially became Mary Bennett, with a new sense of belonging that I had longed for since Mom sent me away. With Grandma's support, I finally felt like I was home. I began looking forward to the future, and Grandma encouraged me to focus on my studies, especially science, which had always fascinated me. "You've got a sharp mind for it, Mary. You could go into medicine. How would you like that?" she suggested one day as we were going over some of my school projects. "I'd love that, Grandma. I want to help people," I replied, the idea starting to take root. "Then it's settled. We'll get you into a good college program. I'll support you every step of the way," she declared with determination. True to her word, Grandma was there for me throughout my high school years. She tutored me in math and science, using her old-school methods that were strict but effective. "You need to understand the basics, Mary. You can't skip the foundation," she'd insist whenever I struggled with complex problems. I graduated with top marks, thanks to her unwavering support. Grandma then helped me navigate the daunting college application process. When I got accepted into a medical college with a partial scholarship, she was as proud as if she'd received the acceptance herself. "We'll manage the finances. Don't you worry about that," Grandma said when I fretted over the costs. "You focus on your studies and become the best doctor you can be." Medical school was tough but fulfilling. I was drawn to oncology, the branch of medicine that deals with cancer. It was hard, both emotionally and intellectually, but it felt right, like I was exactly where I needed to be. I completed my degree, then my internship, and finally my residency, each step a milestone that Grandma celebrated. "You're making a real difference, Mary. I'm so proud of you," she'd say, her eyes shining with pride. By the time I turned 35, I was fully established in my career as an oncologist. My life was busy but fulfilling, filled with long hours at the hospital and the satisfaction of knowing I was making a difference. Through it all, Grandma was my anchor, always there to listen and offer advice on tough days. But life, as it often does, threw another curveball my way. Grandma's health, which had been declining, took a sudden turn for the worse. It was swift and unexpected, the kind of decline that leaves you scrambling to catch your breath. I remember coming home one evening, tired after a particularly tough day at the hospital. Grandma was sitting in her favorite armchair, looking out the window. Her voice was weaker when she called me over. "Mary, come sit with me for a bit," she said, patting the chair next to her. I sat down and took her hand in mine. It felt fragile, like it could break with too much pressure. "I'm not going to beat around the bush," she started, her tone serious. "The doctors say there's not much time left. We need to talk about practical things." A lump formed in my throat, and my eyes filled with tears. "Grandma, please." She squeezed my hand, her grip still strong. "No tears now, Mary. We've got things to sort out. You need to be ready." The next few weeks were a blur of doctor's visits, late nights, and legal paperwork. Grandma wanted to make sure everything was in order for me, that there would be no complications with her estate or her wishes. When the end came, it was peaceful. Grandma passed away in her sleep at home, just as she had wanted. The emptiness left by her passing was overwhelming, and the silence in the house felt too heavy to bear at times. Planning the funeral was hard. I went through her address book, calling relatives and friends. The responses were polite, some even warm, but it became clear that not many would make the effort to come. My heart ached, not just for the loss of Grandma, but for the loneliness of this farewell. The funeral day was quiet, the chapel more empty than full. I stood there, feeling oddly detached as the priest spoke about life, loss, and legacy. It didn't take long after the funeral for the past I thought I had left behind to come knocking at my door. My mother, stepfather, and their daughter, who was now 21 years old, showed up unexpectedly. My mother didn't waste any time. "Mary, you need to share the inheritance your grandmother left you," she demanded, her tone entitled. I stared at them, disbelief mixing with anger. "You left me, remember? 21 years ago, you decided I was too much of a burden." My mother's face twisted into a sneer. "Ungrateful girl. Now you're a rich doctor with an inheritance. You owe us." I laughed, the sound bitter. "Grandma adopted me legally. You're nothing to me now." The shock on her face was almost comical. My stepfather, ever the bully, leaned in. "You're going to regret this, Mary." As they left, I slammed the door behind them, the click of the lock sounding unusually satisfying. Standing there, my back against the door, I felt a mix of relief and renewed determination. A few days after their visit, I was at work when I got a call from a neighbor. "Mary, it looks like your family's at your house again. They've been bringing in furniture. It looks like they're moving in or something." When I pulled into the driveway, seeing their car parked out front made my stomach turn. I walked in to find my mother, stepfather, and stepsister unpacking boxes in the living room, acting like they owned the place. "What are you doing?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. My mother turned around, feigning surprise. "Oh, Mary, we're just settling in. After all, this is family property." "No, it's not. This is my house, legally left to me by Grandma. You need to leave now." My stepfather stepped forward with a smirk on his face. "Make us. We're family, and we deserve a part of this house." I could feel the anger rising inside me. "You haven't been family for over 21 years. You can't just come here and claim what's mine." My stepsister, who had been watching from the side, finally spoke up. "Come on, Mary, don't be so heartless. We're just asking for what's fair." "Fair?" I laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. "What's fair about abandoning a child? What's fair about only showing up when you think there's money to be had?" They had no answers, just scowls and muttered curses. "I'm calling the police," I declared, pulling out my phone. My mother tried to stop me. "You'll regret this, Mary." "I've regretted knowing you for years. This is nothing new," I shot back as I dialed 533. The police arrived quickly. I explained the situation, showing them the legal documents proving my ownership of the house and Grandma's will. The officers were firm. "You need to leave," one of them told my mother and stepfather. "This property doesn't belong to you, and if you don't comply, you'll be removed forcibly." My stepfather glared at me, his anger clear, but there was nothing he could do. "This isn't over, Mary," he threatened as they gathered their things. "Oh, but it is," I replied, my tone cold and final. After they were gone, I walked through the house through Grandma's house. Each room was filled with memories, each corner a testament to her love and the life she had built here, a life she had fought to pass on to me. Standing in her favorite spot by the window, I made a promise, not just to her but to myself. I would not let the bitterness of the past tarnish my future. I had fought hard to become who I was, and I would continue to fight to honor her legacy and the sacrifices she had made for me.